All right, so welcome again to the third in a series of webinars co-hosted by Diversity Abroad and Ies Abroad. We're joined today by Gretchen Cook Anderson, who's going to share some information with us about exploring funding study abroad. So we're also want to just remind everyone about some of the other webinars that we've done. The first that we did was on internships abroad. The second was on exploring the cultural challenges of international travel. And now we are looking forward to talking about the all-important aspect of funding study abroad. As we go through the info session today, if you have questions, you can place them in the panel that is on your screen. And you can also just save them for the end. We will have a question and answer period. And right now, what I will do is turn it over to Gretchen, and I'll share a little bit more information about diversity abroad as we go into the question and answer session. So, Gretchen, it is all to you.
Okay, well, hi everybody. Good afternoon. It's really nice to be with you guys today. Some of you may have joined us for previous sessions, and if you are new to this Diversity Abroad and IES Abroad student webinar series, welcome. Happy to have you, and I hope that you'll be able to get some good information out of today's session. And again, as Deirdre mentioned, if you have questions, please feel free to just kind of jot them down to yourself, and then we'll leave some time at the end to take some questions from everybody. And hope, if your question is not answered during the session, hopefully we'll have some time to answer it just after the content. And if you have other questions that might come to you even after the session is over today, then please feel free to just email me or Deirdre, and we will definitely get back to you with an answer. Okay? So let's get started, and let's see if we can get these slides to advance. Hopefully, technology will cooperate with us today. Okay, so this is just a little slide about me, just so you'll have a sense of who I am from the standpoint of my understanding and knowledge of the study abroad field and funding and other kinds of aspects of study abroad, especially when it comes to diversifying the students from the United States who choose to study abroad. So a little bit about me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it so we can jump straight into our content today. But I am a study abroad alumni myself, or alumna as a female, and I studied abroad by chance with IES Abroad many years ago in Japan. I spent a full academic year there as a junior during my time at Spelman College, which was my alma mater, and then went on to get a master's degree. That experience was so uplifting and life-changing for me that it really changed the trajectory of what I wanted to do academically and career-wise afterwards. So I did go on to get a master's degree at Johns Hopkins University, obviously finished the BA at Spelman, and then have had lots of opportunities over many years to travel to a ton of really wonderful countries, and have also had an opportunity to work short-term abroad as well. So this is a field and an area that I have a lot of passion for. I have been a beneficiary myself of the value of study abroad over the years. I have watched other students over the years study abroad and then really reap the value and the benefits out of the experience in their careers and in their academic life. So I'm really hoping, again, that many of you who may still be sort of thinking about study abroad and maybe haven't made a final decision as to whether or not you will do it or not, we're hoping that maybe some of the additional information that you get today may help you finalize that decision, especially if that decision is based on the financial aspects of studying abroad. Hopefully we can provide you with some information that will help you with some solutions that you may need. And I run a program or an initiative at IES Abroad that's called the Initiative to Diversify Education Abroad, or the IDEA. And I've been on board for about 3 years, and actually it's 3 years as of next month, as a matter of fact. And during this period of time, we've been able to really increase the diversity of our students. And that means diversity not just from the standpoint of race and ethnicity, but also students with disabilities, students who are of diverse identity and sexual orientation, students who are first-generation college students, non-traditional majors, which is also an area of focus for us. And I also work to try to increase the number of males who study abroad, because study abroad has historically been overwhelmingly a female activity at the college level. So diversity from various different angles. And we've been fortunate enough through a great deal of work and effort and partnering with our schools that are in our consortium that we've been able to grow the diversity of our students who study on IES programs in this last year by 11.3%, which I'm really proud of. And over the last 5 years, we've been able to grow our student diversity by more than 22%. So very excited about that and happy to share that with you. All right, let me see if we can move on. Okay, and I just wanted to, before we jump into the bulk of our content, I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of background. So you have an idea that financing study abroad it can be a barrier for a lot of students, one that's a very real barrier, and but in some instances it's more of a perceived barrier than a real one. Some students will assume that they don't have enough money to study abroad, but when we really start looking at the options that are out there and available, we find that yes, indeed, there are scholarships or campus-related aid that can actually provide you opportunity to finance your study abroad experience. But I just wanted to share this with you, and this is in particular about low-income students in particular. We know that not all of you guys would necessarily categorize yourselves as low income, but you still can be in a tight financial situation when it comes to trying to study abroad, okay? And then, again, when we talk about diversity of our students, race and ethnicity is an aspect of that diversity that we talk about. And so I just wanted to share this slide that tells us a little bit about how race plays into study abroad at times when it comes to an inadequacy of financing. So 81% of African American students in particular have responded that a lack of finances influenced their decision to not study abroad. And that's compared to 69.2% of Caucasian students. And so, again, it's just to give us a little bit of understanding about how sometimes race and financing can kind of play into whether a student ends up studying abroad or not, okay? That's obviously not for every student who is of diverse racial background, but sometimes is the case. What does the outcome of the money barrier on study abroad look like? And I wanted to share with you, too, before I go forward, that the students that you see in the imagery here, these are just about all kind of actually real students who've studied abroad. These young ladies were in Cape Town, South Africa. So this is what the state of study abroad looks like from the standpoint of diversity. And again, money plays into this to a degree. There are some other factors related to why students choose to not study abroad or to study abroad, but money is definitely, we found that that's the #1 decision maker when it comes to whether a student will study abroad or not. So here I just wanted to break down just, again, diversity from a racial and ethnic standpoint for you to know based on who you are and take a look at the statistics here to get a sense of who's studying abroad the most. We have seen in the last year an increase in that racial and ethnic diversity of U.S. students studying abroad across each group except for Native American students. And we've seen a little bit of a drop-off in Asian American students, which is sort of interesting. And students of Hispanic or Latino descent are actually the fastest growing segment of U.S. students who are choosing to study abroad. There's just a little background there. Okay, so, and you have to excuse my expression here, but you can make it rain, really, by juggling solutions to the money barrier. So you'll see this young man here, he's kind of really trying to figure out the money situation with study abroad, and these are kind of 5 different buckets, if you will. These are different areas in which you can really strategize and find solutions to your study abroad financing dilemmas, okay? And we're going to get into each one of these areas over the next few minutes. So first, you might want to know, even from the outset, what does study abroad cost? What are indeed the more obvious and then some of the hidden costs of study abroad? If you are someone who has not had the opportunity to really look into this in depth just yet, hopefully this will give you some better information just to kind of get you thinking about some of the kinds of costs that are associated with the study abroad experience. So you have your program fees, and your program fees, what are those? Program fees are generally inclusive of tuition, the cost of tuition, the cost of housing in most cases, some kind of meal plan in many instances. There are some study abroad programs that don't include a meal plan. Some include a partial meal plan. So you really, when you're exploring study abroad opportunities, you really do want to find out exactly what your money will be paying for, or your tuition package. You want to know exactly what that money is paying for. So those program fees often will also include health and life insurance that will be provided either by an external provider like Ies Abroad, or will be provided by a company that perhaps maybe your college or university works with, okay? Meals. So meals would be an extra cost if they're not fully provided by the program that you choose. And again, you want to have a really good idea of what meals are included and what meals are not. It could be that if you're living in an apartment that is away from a university setting, if it's in a private student apartment, you may find that your meals are not included and that you will be doing all your cooking on your own or in collaboration with some of your other students in your cohort. So just something to think about. Passport and visa fees. These are also fees. Your visa fees can vary depending on what country you go to. You want to check with your advisor, your study abroad advisor at your institution, to try to find out exactly what those fees are. Most visa fees are also available, I think they're also available on the internet, so you can look that up on your own. But the professionals that are in the study abroad office at your school would have this information as well. Passport fees, visa fees, okay? Airfare, you want to have a sense of what does it cost to actually fly back and forth to the host country of your choice. Ground transportation, what's it going to cost for you to maybe get a cab from the airport to your academic center or to the university where you're going to be studying. Or if you're going directly to an apartment or homestay home, you want to know, kind of have a sense of what are the ground transportation costs. General living expense budget, and I usually strongly recommend adding a 25% cushion to that, because no matter what your budget, generally you will find that once you're abroad, that there are always some unexpected expenses or fees that you may encounter. So just to make sure that you have the ability to handle those things as they come, I would definitely recommend a 25% cushion on top of whatever amount you budget for living expenses while you're abroad. Currency exchange fees. There's generally a fee for exchanging currency, whether you do it at the bank or you do it at the airport, which we always discourage because the fees tend to be higher doing it there. Optional field trip costs. Most study abroad programs also include certain field trips that are already built in and that are included in the fee that you pay, but they may also provide optional group field trips that have an extra cost attached to them. If you think you might want to participate in any of those optional choices, then you want to find out how much those field trips are going to cost up front, and then try to make sure that you've got enough money to cover whatever optional field trips there are. Local subway, train, and bus passes. So oftentimes students who are going to be in country for a particular period of time, it can be less expensive for you to buy a pass, a bus pass, a train pass, a subway pass. That's for your local transportation to and from your school. It could be to and from an academic center that's not necessarily on a campus. So you want to kind of look into that, ask questions of your study abroad advisor about those kinds of expenses as well. Cell phone and smartphone roaming fees. These can be really expensive, and so we usually recommend that folks not use their cell phones unless it's actually an emergency, but obviously have cell phones and smartphones with them. Most programs will actually require that you have a smartphone or cell phone with you, and some will actually provide low-cost cell phones as part of the study abroad fee package. So that can vary from program to program. But you want to be careful of roaming fees because they can be really, really expensive. And we suggest that you use Google Chat or Skype if you want to be able to communicate with friends and family back home, because guess what? That's free, right? Banking and ATM fees. You want to be, again, very careful if you do set up a bank account while you're abroad, or if you're going to be withdrawing funds from your own ATM card while you're abroad. You want to kind of have a sense of what kinds of ATM fees you may incur. Again, your study abroad advisors at your school, or if you're working with a study abroad provider like Ies Abroad or SIT or CIEE or others, you also can ask questions of your program advisors. And these are people who work with these locations all the time, and they have lots of great answers for you about these kinds of expenses. U.S. apartment sublet subsidy and dorm hold fees. These can vary from student to student depending on what your housing situation is at your home school here in the United States. But if you have an apartment and you're going to be subletting it, there might be some kind of subsidy where you might have to pay a little bit of extra money every month if your subletter is not paying exactly the same rent to you as you're paying to your landlord. So just things like that you want to have in mind as you're thinking about even what's going to happen with your housing here in the United States while you're abroad. Single occupancy room surcharges versus having a roommate abroad. So in those, with those programs where you do have a chance to do a roommate, you generally will pay less to have a double occupancy room than you would for a single occupancy room. So again, it's just doing the research, asking the right questions, knowing what the cost would be if you choose to have a single room versus a double, or live with a roommate or two. And then tipping for services. Depending on the culture where you're going to be in your home country, it's really a good idea, again, to have a sense of, what do people tip for different services, whether it's tipping a taxi driver, eating out at a restaurant, whatever it might be. You want to have a general sense of whether tipping is part of that culture. In Japan, for example, where I studied, there is no tipping. It's actually looked at sort of as an insult if you try to tip someone. It's just not a part of their culture. But if you were to go to other countries, then, just like the United States, then tipping can be part of the culture, and you want to have a general sense of kind of what are the tipping rates based on the kinds of services that you might require while you're in that country. Hey, so how did she pay for this trip to see me? And again, keep in mind, these are all like actually real students. So there we go. Okay, another smart thing to do is you're choosing your program. There are a lot of factors that go into choosing the right program for you for study abroad. If the financing of study abroad is a big issue for you, if you don't have a lot of money, if it's going to be a pinch already for you to be able to afford the study abroad experience, then you may want to factor program cost into your overall decision, okay? And have that be definitely one of the factors that you include as you're making your final decision. So in doing so, you want to research to identify the most affordable programs. Most study abroad providers like IES or ISA or others, we actually will have lists if you ask for them of some of our more cost-friendly programs. So you certainly can ask the program provider. Or you can also talk with the folks, again, in your study abroad office and let them know that you really want to get a sense of what are some of the more affordable study abroad programs out there for you, based on the fact that money might be a little tight with regard to tuition and other fees and expenses. Weigh the cost of a semester program versus a short-term program. Those of us in the study abroad field, we generally tend to feel very strongly about really wanting students to do more traditional length study abroad programs, which would be a semester program, a summer length program, or a year-long program. That makes us really happy when students actually enroll in those length programs. But again, if money is a dilemma for you, but you want that international experience, you may want to look into some short-term program options that may cost less. Will still give you an opportunity to experience what it's like to travel and study abroad and also get some course credit, but may not cost as much as a traditional length program. So again, it's an option for you to explore. Know what's included in program fees versus what's not. So this goes back to, meals are included in some programs, and in some programs they're not, or they may only be partially provided. So you really do want to look at what's provided in those program fees that you're going to be paying. Consider host country's cost of living. That's another big one. Living in London versus living in Costa Rica. Those are very big cost of living differences. So if you know that, again, that your finances will be tight while you are abroad, you might want to consider a country where the cost of living is significantly lower than perhaps some other locations. Think about the U.S. to host country exchange rate. That, too, will help you understand how far your own money will go when it comes to your personal living expenses while you're abroad. So make sure you're doing your research, talking with your study abroad advisors about all of that. Use a worksheet for study abroad living expenses to get a big picture of program and other costs. Again, I strongly advise using a worksheet. Ies Abroad, we have a worksheet on our website that I'd be happy to provide a link to anyone who's interested. There are other study abroad providers who have similar worksheets. Your study abroad office at your school may also have worksheets that they can provide you either in hard copy, or they may have links on their website. So again, I would really strongly recommend do up a worksheet. I mean, things will always change. It's kind of a work in progress when you're working on a budget for living abroad, but at least you'll have some idea of how much money you may want to have with you when you go abroad. And then ask about costs of local and regional travel. So again, everything from ground transportation like trains, buses, and subway, to even airplane. If you're going to be traveling from one country to another, perhaps during a holiday break or something like that, you want to have a sense of, kind of what would that transportation cost you, so that you at least have an estimate to work with. Want to know how we paid for study abroad? All right. So what money pays for study abroad? I get this question from students pretty frequently. Students generally want to know, well, how do I pay for study abroad? Is it all money that has to come out of my pocket or my family's pocket? Does my scholarship at school, will that cover or help to cover my study abroad experience? So this is where we kind of talk about that, just so that for those of you, again, who have not had a chance to explore all of this in depth yet, so that you'll have a pretty good idea of what money pays for study abroad and what money might not pay for study abroad. So, institutional aid and school grants. What is institutional aid? I mean, it's kind of like this, kind of fancy term. Essentially what it means is campus scholarships. So if you're on scholarships that your school has extended to you, it might be a named scholarship after a big money donor or something like that, and maybe they've got a scholarship where they disperse aid to students on an annual basis, and you've been fortunate enough to receive one of those scholarships. You want to make sure that that kind of money is actually going to travel with you and help pay for your study abroad experience. On some campuses, institutional aid cannot pay for study abroad. This is less likely than not. So at most campuses, your institutional aid goes along with your overall tuition package and helps to pay for study abroad. But at some institutions, there are exceptions. At some schools, institutional aid cannot be used to pay for study abroad. So you want to make sure you're asking that kind of question when you're meeting with the people in your study abroad office. So again, in most students' instances, that money will help to pay for your study abroad experiences, but not in every instance. So please do ask the question. School grants. Some students are offered grants from, let's say, the chairperson of their department, something like that. You may get like a chairman's grant if you're a major in a particular department. You want to ask the question to make sure that that money can be used to study abroad. Homeschool tuition, and what is that? So at at about 33, I think it's, no, 29% of schools, excuse me, at about 29% of colleges and universities, and this is according to the Forum on Education Abroad, which is a study abroad organization. According to them, about 29% of colleges and universities in the United States charge homeschool tuition for study abroad. So what does that mean? That means that whatever tuition you are paying to attend your home school here in the United States, you will pay that same amount, that exact same amount to study abroad, even if the study abroad program may cost a little bit less than your homeschool tuition, but that means that there's a policy at your institution where you pay homeschool tuition. What this usually means is that study abroad is very affordable for you, because in most instances with homeschool tuition, your school's tuition is actually it actually exceeds the cost of most study abroad programs. So in those instances, you usually already have the money to study abroad if you're just paying the tuition package that you already are required to pay anyway. So that's something that you want to ask again in your study abroad office. Do you pay homeschool tuition, or do you pay the actual cost of an individual study abroad program? So it's a very, very essential question that you want to ask at your school. Pell Grant and state aid. So some students who are at a certain income level or have a household income level that's at a certain point or below, you will be eligible then for a Pell Grant, and may be a Pell Grant recipient. So for Pell Grant students, Pell Grant monies or state aid, there are some scholarships that are provided on the state level for college, like in Tennessee and Georgia. There are the Hope Scholars. It's called different things in different states, but federal dollars and state aid can be used to pay for your study abroad program, okay? So just wanted to make sure everybody knows that. And then external, private, or federal scholarships. So your federal scholarships, yes, can be used, and that would be scholarships like the Gilman Scholarship, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then other external private foundation scholarships can generally all be used to help pay for your study abroad program. You want to make sure you're asking the questions just to make sure, though. But in most instances, external private foundation monies and federal scholarships can be used for study abroad. You can generally also use money from an international education fee at your school. Some schools, not all, some schools charge every student an international education fee. Once you enroll in that school as a freshman, you're required, as part of your comprehensive fee that you pay to attend that school, there will be included an international education fee. That fee can vary in its amount depending on where you go to school. For some students, it might be, it might be $150. For some schools, it might be $500. At some schools, it could be as much as $2,000. It really depends on the institution. But what it means is once you've paid into that fee, if you decide to study abroad, you generally can pull that amount out, and it would go toward your study abroad program fee. It would go towards paying for your study abroad program. So again, you want to ask the question at your school, is there an international education fee or a globalization fee that you pay into it to attend your school, where you could use those monies that you've paid? Can you use that money to help pay for your study abroad? Student loans, of course. Student loans, once you've taken out a student loan, you can certainly use that money for study abroad. We generally try to encourage students to look for other external scholarships and aid so that it can reduce the burden, your student loan burden while you're abroad, instead of extending your student loan burden while you're abroad. But you certainly can use student loans to study abroad if you'd like. Parents and students' contributions out of pocket, this one's pretty obvious. If your family or you have any funds that you can contribute towards your study abroad experience, then of course, you'd want to do that. If you have any personal savings, or your parents or other family members do, and they can help you, then that's fantastic. Personal savings, again, we just mentioned that. And then GI Bill, Veterans Administration funds. For any students who have served time in the military and are eligible for the GI Bill, there are some stipulations depending on a student's major at their institution and what their major requires of them. before graduation, but in most instances, GI Bill monies can be used to put towards study abroad. But again, ask the question, make sure you know that the answer is yes. Wait, I can tell you what scholarships helped me to get to Japan. Okay, and here's some actual examples of external scholarships that we encourage you. Please apply, 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 and apply again. If you're a student who is really seriously trying to figure out how they're going to pay for study abroad, how you're going to afford it, if the tuition at your institution in the United States is less than the cost of the study abroad program that is that you've got your heart set on, then you really want to apply to every kind of external scholarship that you possibly can. These are some options here. If you are an IES, if your school is a member of the IES Abroad Consortium, which again is the organization that I work for, then that means that you'd be eligible for the scholarships that IES Abroad disperses to our students who study on our programs. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. Diversity Abroad, and I think here Deidre may want to say a little bit about Diversity Abroad scholarships.
Sure. So Diversity Abroad,
If she's there.
yeah, we
If
have.
she's not, then that's okay, because I don't want to take up too much time. But let me know, Deidre, if you want to jump in at any point.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
Back in, and hopefully that will reactivate.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
And we are back. I'm hoping that you all can hear us now. If you can, just give me an affirmative either in the chat or in the questions to let me know that you guys can hear us again. Awesome. Perfect. So we will just let Gretchen tune back in. And when she's back, we will keep moving forward with the scholarships.
Hello, Deidre, can you guys hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you, and I think the students can also hear you. So I think
Okay, I
we
I
are.
hope that the audio has come back clearly.
Yes, it has. I'm getting positive responses from the students. So um, I will allow you again to take it over.
Okay, thank you, and we apologize everyone for the technical difficulties. These things do happen sometimes with webinars. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and skip forward if the if the webinar system will allow me to. Let's see here. Let's see if we can get it to move forward. Okay. So I had just, before we had the interruption, I was talking about IES Abroad scholarships that are available for students. I think you guys have had an opportunity to take a look at that. So at this point, I'm going to scroll forward. All right. There's the students that are at Stonehenge in the UK. Okay. So hopefully everybody can still actually hear me. Finding hard to find money. So, there's the traditional means of financing study abroad that most of us would probably think of, which would be your campus scholarships, your financial aid package that comes from the federal government, and Pell Grants and student loans and all those kinds of good things. I think those are the fairly obvious ways to finance your study abroad experience. But when those things fail, or if they are not enough to fully fund your study abroad program that you've chosen, there are some other ways that you can dig up some additional monies. And I would certainly suggest and encourage that you try some of these if you haven't already, if you're in the process right now of trying to find the final financing for your study abroad experience. Oftentimes in a school's provost or a dean's office, there will be discretionary funds. Every dean's office and provost office has an annual budget, a fiscal year budget, and sometimes there is funding that has not been allotted or pegged for anything in particular, or it could be that it was funds that were perhaps they didn't need all of those monies for a particular project, so then there might be some extra money left over. So it's always a good idea as a student, if you are still in need of some extra financing, to perhaps approach your provost office or the dean, your school's dean's office, and actually ask if there might be any way to apply for a grant for study abroad through their office. Okay, and this would be separate from the study abroad office. So oftentimes there are funds available, but you do have to ask for them. Sometimes you'll get a no, but a lot of times you might get a yes. So it's certainly worth trying. Serve as a research assistant abroad on a project in exchange for a stipend or a grant. There may be a chairperson in your department or a faculty member in your department that may have some foundation funds or other federal funding for a particular project that they're working on. And that project may include some aspect of research that has to be done abroad. If you were to approach your chairperson or faculty members and just ask around, you may find that it might be possible to get hired on as a research assistant while you're abroad in exchange for a stipend or a grant. And those might be some extra monies that can then help you to be able to afford the program of your choice. Host a crowdsourced website friends and family campaign. These would be websites like fundmytravel.com, fundly.com, and there are tons of these out there these days. There's probably at least 20 crowdsourced funding websites where you can set up a page for free, and you can essentially send the link to your page out to friends and family to ask them to support your study abroad opportunity. They can do it with $5, $10, all the way up to thousands of dollars. But the nice thing is that it's a quick and easy way to raise some monies that can help to augment some of your expenses. Ask a popular blogger if you can write for them from abroad for a fee. So, if there's a local blogger that you know about, and perhaps depending on what they write about, there may be opportunities for you to actually do some extra writing for them yourself while you're abroad and be a contributor. But again, you have to ask. You have to look around and dig around on the internet and, ask friends and see if there might be someone who you could talk to about this kind of opportunity. Ask your church or place of worship for a donation. Oftentimes, churches, especially if your family has been loyal members of a particular church or place of worship, they may be willing to extend a small grant or a small scholarship to you that can help to pay for your airfare, or that can help to pay to offset the cost of your airfare or something like that. Join with other students and host a fundraiser at a local restaurant for a percentage of patron revenue. This, again, a popular idea. I knew some students at Howard University who did this about a year ago, and they raised about $600. And what they did was they then took the $600 and they split it up amongst them. So, if it's 4 students and they get together and do this, then, it's a little bit of extra money that they can put toward their study abroad experience for not a lot of effort. So that's something that also could be a good idea. Research whether you can work legally in your host country part-time. Now, as a study abroad provider representative, this is not something that I would sanction necessarily, but it certainly is possible for some students. I personally did work part-time while I was a study abroad student in Japan. I worked legally. I was able to actually secure a work visa by being sponsored by a Japanese language company, and I taught English to Japanese business people a few hours a week for some extra pocket change. So I was able to do this legally and get sponsored for the proper kind of visa. And it did not in any way interrupt my academics. So that's important as well. Okay, let's see if we can skip forward. Here we go. Save dollars and max out the fun in your host city, just like this guy right here. Okay, let's see if we can get forward. There we go. Live frugally, but live it up. There are a number of ways that you can actually enjoy your study abroad experience, even if you're on a tight budget. You may not, travel abroad with the tons and tons of money that maybe some other students might be able to go abroad with. But you can still have a great time and have a really meaningful and memorable experience by just maybe trying some of the things that we've got here. There are a number of ways to really enjoy that experience on a tight budget. So you can host group cook-offs and potluck dinners as a way to save money but still eat at the same time. And you can do that with other students who are in your cohort. You can get together with perhaps students who are natives of that country who attend the same university where your program is located. Get together with them sometimes and just like do potluck dinners. That can be, it's a lot of fun, like I said, and it helps you to save some of your own money. Swap tips on traveling on a budget. So make sure that you're being friendly with other students and that you're engaging them and asking questions about staying in a hostel if you're going to be going on a weekend trip with a group of friends, or ideas about how to get discounts on train fares, and try Priceline.com, which of course is third-party travel providers, or another similar kind of company, to see what kinds of deals you can get even in country while you're abroad. You may be able to find some deals on these kinds of websites. Avoid roaming fees, which I mentioned already. Learn the art of bargaining at outdoor markets. In a lot of countries, you have these really great outdoor markets where you can buy everything from food to clothing to electronics. You want to, learn how to bargain. Don't take that price that they've told you right up front and just let that be the end of it. In many of these cultures where you may be studying abroad, bargaining is actually part of the culture, and it's an accepted activity, and it's something that can save you some money. Search online for free city local activities near you. Everything from festivals and picnics to embassy events to free days at the museum and so forth. Get out on foot and actually walk around the city. Really get to know the city where you're staying. You may find that you'll end up, by the end of your study abroad experience, you'll know your host city better than some of the other students who were kind of off and flying away to other countries on the weekends and things like that. You'll actually know the city better than a lot of those students and can take pride in that. Okay. And these are some wonderful pictures of some real students who've studied abroad and have had a great time in different countries. Many of whom, by the way, were on tight budgets and were able to stretch their dollars or stretch their foreign currency and have a really, really great time. Here's some guys in China. They were there last summer. And some parting thoughts. So, you'll adapt, and, if you have to live life on a budget while you're abroad, so be it. Make the best of it. There are so many things to do. I was a student who was on a very, very tight budget when I was abroad for an entire academic year, and I had the time of my life. And there's a way to do it. If it's something that you really, really want to do, not only can you fund your study abroad experience, but you can have a great time while you're abroad, even on a tight budget. So ultimately, you will love your time abroad. And so I think we've got about 10 or 11 minutes for some questions. If you have specific questions about funding the study abroad experience, how to research the cost of a study abroad program, or different tips on actually living frugally abroad, I'm happy to help with any of those questions.
Awesome. So if you will type your questions into the panel on your screen, that would be great. I will go ahead and share. I I think there were audio problems at first, but diversityabroad.com does have three specific scholarships that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. So we have the diversityabroad.com scholarship, which is $500 for fall, spring, or summer. The deadline for summer is coming up April 1st, and for fall, it will actually be July 1st. And those are just very broad, general, um, very not as tight, stringent requirements on those. We just require you to complete an application and submit a video essay as opposed to a regular essay. We also have the Diversity Network Summer Scholarship, and that scholarship is just for students who are at member institutions of the Diversity Network. And you can look in the application and see if your school is listed there. And of course, that's just for summer. And we also have the Diversity Abroad and CET scholarship that is $1,500. And that is for students who are participating on a CET program, and that is for the fall, and the deadline for that is May 1st. So those are just some of the scholarships that you can find by going to Diversity Abroad's website, and we also have an international scholarship portal that lists many more scholarships, including the ones that Gretchen referred to earlier in the presentation. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the panel. Let's see what we have here.
And Deidre, I'm going to ask too, as you ask the questions that that students are asking, could you also double up and type those questions in for me in the chat section, because I'm actually having a little bit of audio dilemma on my end in hearing you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the first question is from Erin, and I'll type it into the chat box, but she wants to go back to the slide that listed the additional scholarships. It seems like that's when the audio left out.
Okay, and I couldn't hear the entire question, so if you would kindly quickly type it in for me, I'll be able to answer the question. So I'm assuming now that students can hear me and you can hear me, but my audio is a little tricky from my end. Okay, she wants to go back to the slide with the scholarships. The audio went out. Okay. Great, no problem. We're doing that now. There you go. So these are some of the, again, some of the external scholarships that are offered. The one that says HAKU Scholarship, for students who are unfamiliar with that, that's the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. They actually offer a scholarship that students can use for study abroad. And if any student is interested in that, if you are a student of Hispanic or Latino descent, and you also attend a HAKU college or university, so there is a special designation for colleges and universities that are HAKU schools. And if you go on the HAKU website, again, it's HACU, or you can type in the whole thing, Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. If you were to type that in, you can actually get a list of schools around the United States that are considered HAKU schools. Those are schools where there's at least a 25% student population of Hispanic or Latino descent. And so that HAKU scholarship is a fairly generous scholarship for students who might want to study abroad from those schools.
All right, we have two more questions that are similar, asking about additional webinars. And so the Internships Abroad webinar, we do have the audio recording of that if you go to the Diversity Abroad YouTube channel. And we do plan to have more webinars in the future. These will also be posted to the YouTube account, and then Gretchen and I will both be able to host other webinars in the future. We will definitely have at least one more before the semester is out. And then you'll also be able to see that one on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, and that's really great advice from Deidre. Diversity Abroad does indeed have a YouTube channel, and after we host the student webinars like this one, this webinar and others are available on the Diversity Abroad YouTube site. So I would certainly refer back when you're ready to begin the study abroad process and you just want to remind yourself about some of the financing options that are available and what aspects of cost go into the study abroad process or experience. If you're interested in that, then you can always refer back to this webinar, but it will be there online for you in perpetuity. Okay? Hope that helps.
And also, if you have specific questions about internships abroad, of course, after you view the webinar, I'm pulling the contact information back up. So you can reach out to Gretchen directly, or you can reach out to us at diversityabroad.com if you've viewed the webinar and you still have some other questions about securing internships abroad. All right, so and Min says thank you. Okay, we have about 4 more minutes. I don't see any more questions listed. If you have any other questions, go ahead and type them in. I will take this as an opportunity to thank everyone for attending, and of course, thank Gretchen as always for sharing such insightful and valuable information with everyone. And I'll allow you to just give the closing comments, Gretchen.
Okay, well, I mean, I wanted to just, thank everybody for calling in, taking the time during a busy school day to call in on this topic and to try to learn more. Study abroad is it's really, really a meaningful experience and very well worth the time, the effort, and the money. And so we really do hope that this is, an activity during your college years that you will explore and that you will actually embark on. You'll never regret it. And like I said, it's definitely worth the money, though I know it can be a high cost activity, but it's also a high impact activity. And you get a lot of great benefit and value out of it, not only in the short term, but in the long term. So even though digging up all the funds that are necessary to study abroad can take a bit of effort for some students, but again, it's well worth it in the long run. So I encourage you to stick to it, to really stay encouraged and to know that in most instances there is enough funding out there. If you really do the homework and you really do the legwork and the trench work that's needed to raise some additional scholarship dollars and to do some self-fundraising as well. I mean, you definitely can do it in many instances. So. But again, as Deirdre said, if you have additional questions or you want to talk one-on-one offline, please do feel free to reach out to me at either the phone number there or the email address. I'm happy to answer any other questions for you that you might have on the financing end and scholarships and such. And if I don't know the answer, I'm happy to dig it up for you and help provide it for you or refer you to someone else who can answer the question for you. So thank you very, very much. I wish you guys the best. Bon voyage for those of you who are headed abroad this summer or next fall. Hope to be able to stay in touch and take care and thanks again.
Thanks, Gretchen. Goodbye, everyone.